How did that come to be? Well, somebody made it up. You know what I'm saying? So even your "that's just how it is" was somebody's imagination. And so like, what if a better idea can become "that's just what it is"?
Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. Come with me on a journey as I explore what it means to find common ground at a time when it feels increasingly harder to do so, to listen more than we speak so that we can understand that our differences don't have to divide us. My aim with this show is to bring you perspectives and ways of looking at issues or topics that perhaps you haven't considered before, so that you can then take that new knowledge and apply it to your ability to empathize with the people around you. I'm a former journalist who believes everyone has a story to tell, and it's only when we ask questions and listen that we truly reveal what connects us as humans. Our dreams, our desires, our experiences, our ideas, and who we truly are. I love coffee. I'm probably not saying anything too earth-shattering there. Most people do. But I get such a simple joy and delight out of coffee. I like mine black. No sugar or cream for me, please. Each morning as I pour that first cup and settle into my chair for some reading, I take in that smell and let it stir my excitement for that first sip. I even like the burn at the back of my throat that comes along with those first few swigs. I recently watched a YouTube video called "If Coffee Commercials Were Honest," and I felt personally attacked as the host laid bare the addictive nature of coffee lovers like me, and probably you too. But really, in all actuality, I wasn't offended at all. It was actually pretty hilarious and honestly pretty truthful. My guest this week is hip-hop artist and poet Jason Propaganda Petty, and he's got a new book out called Terraform, Building a Better World. After reading his book and digging more into Prop's work, I haven't been able to look at my morning cup of coffee the same. If coffee were a man, it'd be a black man.
Joyous, welcoming, warm, life-giving. He wouldn't be for everyone. He's definitely an acquired taste. Bold, adaptable. He would give of his best for your good and gladly share in the fruits of his grind and sweat. Neither heat nor high pressure would scare him. He would and does flourish come hail or hot water, and he would welcome them both because he knows it brings out the best of him. He wouldn't mind the crushing of a grind, because his is more or less.
My conversation with Prop goes into some deep places. He's an intensely observational man. Not much gets past him. And it flows into the art he creates, taking social issues, cultural issues, religious issues, and making them as accessible as that morning cup of coffee. In particular, I was struck by his explanation of hearing versus listening and how the two are not one and the same. Man, one of my favorite songs of yours, and it's in the book, "If Coffee Were a Man." I got to know, what coffee were you drinking today?
A Cova Peruvian. Yeah, Cova Peruvian. A Cova's from Portland. And yeah, Peruvian. Made a little short Americano. You know what I'm saying?
Very nice.
Sipped good. Yup.
Love it. Man, the words in that, I mean, just powerful, and how you bring it all together kind of at the end to talk about us as human beings, man.
Yeah.
When you write, where does that inspiration come from? Are you just noticing and observing things around? Where does your inspiration come from? I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's observational. My formal training is in, sociology and visual arts, illustration, and then finally education. So like, I just think the degree for which you succeed at any of those is your observational skills. So I spend most of my time really trying to get good at looking, you know, and then translating later, whether it's creatively as far as like poetry or if it's music or podcasting. It's deep observation. So yeah.
You make the distinction in the book, man, the difference between hearing and listening. Does that flow into observation? Can you dive into that and just what is the difference there in your mind?
Well, hearing is like, I mean, that's a muscle, you know, a matter of like, you know, that's just how your ears work. You know what I'm saying? So most of the time you hear the sounds, you know what I'm saying? Or a matter of giving your attention. If some, you know, we're able to tune things out or pay attention to the sound, that doesn't mean you've processed and taken in all that is supposed to give to you. So it definitely plays in. So it's like, I always stop and ask myself, like, especially like if we're going to like jump political divide and I go, okay, I hear y'all because you loud, you know what I'm saying? But in my listening, what are you really trying to say to me? What are you trying to say to the world? Like, what's really going on here? And then if I could get my head around that, then I know like what's a better way to respond that, number one, doesn't undermine my dignity, and number two, honors yours, you know?
Man, what you just said there, how in the world do we do that? How do we begin to pull ourselves out of the emotion of the situation where we hear the loud noises and do what you just said, which is, how do we do that, man?
I mean, that should be the next book, right? Like if I knew the answer, you know what I'm saying? But I think that one of the authors that my wife reads, I can't remember her name, but she's a brilliant feminist thinker. And her phrase is like, the personal is political. So like your, you know, culture is as healed as we are. So I think a lot of it has to do with your own inner work and like being okay with who you are, processing your own trauma, your own pain, you know what I'm saying? And recognizing if somebody is like tapping that wound for yourself and then being able to tell that they're speaking from their own wound, you know what I'm saying? So I think that like, so stepping into those spaces requires a person to do their own inner work, you know? So for me, it's like, I am whatever outrage I'm seeing in somebody else, I try to ask myself, okay, it's just like I said, is this something that, are you scratching an itch that I have, or are you just expressing and you don't know how to say it? Are you expressing some other sort of pain or trauma that I need to be able to at least hear, whether real or imagined, that your body don't know the difference, you know what I'm saying? So just trying to make sure that I'm paying attention like that. Yeah. And I think that's the key, is like the personal is political. So like working on you, you know.
To terraform means to alter the environment in order to make it capable of supporting life. As Prop writes in his book by the same name, if we're building a better world, we need to quiet down the noise so we can focus on what matters, so we can listen, so we can breathe, so we can be. There are so many issues these days where it appears most believe agreement can be reached by merely shouting over any and all opposing views. But is that a culture capable of supporting life? All life? Prop and I discuss this strange push to make every issue we face a zero-sum game. That in order for me to win, you must lose. And how in the end, he believes we don't have a math problem. We have a philosophy problem. Man, what were you hearing, feeling, sensing that over the last, however many years since you started to write this book? What were you sensing and taking in that led to you deciding this is a book that I need to put out there in the world?
Well, my manager asked me, like, what do you want to talk about for the next 10 years? And I thought that was like, hey, 10 years. Okay. You know what I mean? So I was like, this got to be a big idea, but I think it's a lot of like, I can't sit outside of culture because I'm a part of it. You know what I mean? So like, there are times that I'm kind of like pulling the perspective out and then coming back in. So I'm exhausted like everybody else. I'm frustrated like everybody else, feeling like nobody can hear me. And ultimately what I was feeling was like, this is not sustainable. Like, and just knowing history, you're just like, nations don't last. Like this, it's going to crumble, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So we have to, and then just the reality of like, man, we fighting over made up stuff, man. It doesn't have to be this way, So unpacking that and then saying, well, what's a way to say that creatively? And I was like, oh, it's terraforming. It's like, we should start over. And well, let's build it. I mean, we built the civilization we're in now from scratch, so let's build another one because this one sucks.
When you say that, man, how do you get people to come along with us who are like, no, it's gotta stay this way and you have to conform to us? People set in their ways, set in their ideals and their beliefs who don't see change as a positive thing. How do we begin to reach them?
Part of me doesn't feel the responsibility at all to reach them. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the sense that I just don't wear that. That'll drive you crazy. That's something I've learned to shed as I've gotten older, and so, yeah, I don't necessarily wear that burden. What I do think of is asking and suggesting those probing questions like, okay, what's working? Why is it working? Well, is anybody else? Who is this not working for? Like, so it's working for you, so it's okay. Well, what does that say about your character? You know what I'm saying? And like, so you tell like, so I'd rather like, well, okay, cool. You like how it's going. Why? How did we get to this? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, is it ever going to turn on you? Will it ever stop working for you? So it's more like my work, I think, is something that I'm very intentional about is being descriptive instead of prescriptive. Like, I never try to tell you what to do. I'm just describing what's around and making suggestions, but I don't ever want to, because I feel like that's the part that, especially for the person you talk about, that's the part that turns them off. Like, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm suggesting things and making observations,
How would you describe what a world looks like to be terraformed?
The entire world?
Our culture, the world as we know it.
Yeah, that's the journey of the book. It's like, all right, what do we have that's already here? That's like, shows that we already have what we need. Well, the ground just grows food. Like, that's dope. We shouldn't mess with that. But what we should do is make sure it's growing as healthy food as possible. Okay, so then is there enough to go around? Well, yeah, it's a whole planet. So how is anybody running out of food? Oh, that means I'm hoarding. Okay, well then why am I hoarding? Well, it's because I believe that maybe there's not enough, and I'm like, but I know there is. And if there's not enough, it's because us that have resources are being, so maybe there's a better way to live. So then you just start walking down that rabbit trail, and it's like, okay, well, what does hoarding cause among humans? Well, it causes war. It causes divisions. You start building fences. You start building walls to protect what you are, and they safe, they not safe. And has war really helped anybody? Like, is it really ever turned out well? Holistically. And of course, there are times that like there are evils that need to be purged. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a pacifist in that sense. I'm like, sometimes it's like some people need slapping around. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm not coming from that perspective. But what I am saying is like, well, what were the motivations for those? Was it we're just hoarding? Is it an imaginary line that we put on, like the 47th parallel that separates Canada from America? That's made up. It's there's no force field there, so are we fighting over an imaginary line? Like, what are we actually fighting for? So when you start like sort of asking those sort of questions, to me, it's like a world that, takes care of the very soil that we're on, that doesn't function from scarcity all the time, and that is voting and building infrastructure within mind those who have less than ourselves. Like, how do I vote for my neighbor rather than for myself? And how that could cause a society to rise to a place of I don't know, to me, like a better way to live. Now the beauty of the book and even of the question is like, I mean, I don't know. Let's imagine it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's put our heads together. Well, sky's the limits. Let's imagine what could it be,
When you imagine it in your mind, what are some, and you write a little bit about this in the book, but what are some steps? What are some first steps that we can take to challenge our way of thinking, challenge, maybe the world around us to begin to imagine that better world?
Yeah. It's like taking a good scope at, what is now, and is this working? How did we get here? Why did we get here? Why is there why the January 6th insurrection? Like, what, don't give me the easy answer. Why? Let's dig. What happened there? Was this a 4-year problem? Was this an 8-year problem? Was it a 20-year? Was this a 100-year issue? Like, was this building up forever? So I think the steps you got to take is that triage. It's like, let's or that survey first. Like, okay, do I like this? I mean, is this really, what have I accepted as just normal? And why did I accept that? Does it have to be? Was it always this way? So I think, again, it starts with those questions. And then once you get there, then you say, okay, well, what's another way for it to go? And then if you find yourself saying, well, no, I can't, I don't know, this is just how it is. And I'm like, all right, now you got a project. Now it's time to stretch your imagination. Now it's time to say, again, do your inner work. Why do you think that? And how did what you say it just is, how did that come to be? Well, somebody made it up. You know what I'm saying? So even that's just how it is was somebody's imagination. And so, like, what if a better idea can become, that's just what it is?
Man, what's the gap then that we have to overcome, or someone has to overcome, to not only ask that question, but then be real and honest with themselves in the part that they may or may not have played in all of this?
That's that inner work, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, the personal is political. You start working on yourself. You look at your own shadow and being able to, like, embrace it. Like, look at your darkness, look at your hand in there, look at the darkness of what we created. And if you're willing to look at it, then you're able to say, I mean, as I'm a parent of 2, and I mean, the last thing you want to hear is how bad you're doing, right? You know what I'm saying? The baggage you're creating for your children. And I know my immediate response is to say, well, but I'm doing good on this part, and well, maybe it's not that, well, what my parents did is like, so it's like, it's because I don't want to look at it, because deep down, it's the most unthinkable thing. It's the one thing I never wanted to be. And unless you're willing to, like, wrestle with your shadow, wrestle, allow that to dissolve, you know what I'm saying? Like, turn that caterpillar to a butterfly. Like, but the caterpillar has to dissolve, and the only way to do that is excoagulate. I think that's the Greek word for it. I know. But I'm nerdy like that. But, like, we're not going nowhere if you're not willing to do that personal work and just look at the abyss, and then mourn it. Like, I'm not telling you to move past it and be like, okay, let's get to solutions. You may need time to mourn. It takes time. You got to mourn it. Like, mourn that loss, mourn that thing that, like, you feel like you couldn't have done nothing about. Like, jumping around the question right now, I'm gonna push back at you, jumping around the question of you asking about white people. That's what you're asking about. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, look at it in the face, bro. It happened. You know what I'm saying? You benefit from systemic racism. You got to look at it, man. Like, what do you want me to say? You can't explain it away. It's what it is. I'm not blaming you for that because like most white people most eloquently say, I wasn't there. And I'm like, got you. Okay. But you're not even willing to look at it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, but if you look at it, now mourn it in yourself to be like, yeah, that sucked. Man, that shouldn't have happened. I wish, and if I was present, I don't know what I would have done. And there are things in my life that honestly, if I'm gonna be real about, like, of course I worked hard. Of course I suffered. Of course we ain't come from money like everybody. Of course we not. I know that. But I also know there are benefits of being a white dude in America. Okay. Now from here, let's imagine something else, is what I'm saying. So I just think ultimately it's like, you just got to look at it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, like, again, I never wanted to, even in my justice work, I never wanted to like tell you, here are your 5 steps, because I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where you are. I don't know. And if anybody knew that, I would imagine that culture would be in a much different place. You feel me? So, but I do want to say, unless you look at it, we're not going nowhere,
Man, you said something earlier where, you're not going, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you're not going to concern yourself with, it's not your burden to bear for someone else.
Yeah.
Are we creating then more tension for those of us that begin to ask these deep questions of ourselves, begin to confront these shadows in our subconscious, and the people that just simply don't? Like, how do we, like, what is the tension that we're creating there where we say, I'm not going to bear your burden, but also, like, are you coming along with us or not?
Yeah, it's I mean, what the old folks used to call shut mouth grace. Where they used to say that, like, the old folks in the hood used to say, like, you just need a little shut mouth grace, where it's just like, you know what, I'm gonna show you grace by shutting up. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, and there's another phrase that our elders would say, which was like, oh, just keep on living. And now as an adult, I hear the wisdom in that, and the wisdom is in, you're gonna learn. You don't want to hear it from me, and that's fine, because life is gonna teach you this. And that sort of, like I said, that inner healing, I think, and I know I keep coming back to it, but I think, at least in this stage of life right now, especially after finishing this book, I think that that's really a good part of it. Cause I just think, again, like, even that person that is just not willing to hear anything you're saying, most likely they're speaking from pain and trauma. You have an emotional connection to an answer because it's formulated your very personhood, your very identity. Like, it's, you have an emotional, almost at a spiritual level, connection to something that is either verifiably false or extremely detrimental to you. And when it's that, there's no amount of facts. There's no facts I can tell you. This is at core level, your personhood, your personhood is wrapped in this emotional answer and trauma. So, like, to me, my hope for them is like, okay, me pushing at you is triggering you, so that's not helping. What you need to do is to unravel that trauma, so I start to say, okay, so if I did my homework, like, well, what is this person coming from? You coming from, just to use an example, carry out an example, you feel like the world's forgotten you, and nobody's concerned about what you're concerned about. And I tell you what, I'm a Black man in America. You think I don't know how that feels? You know what I'm saying? Like, know exactly how it feels to feel forgotten, so And what you need to hear is, yeah, you know, what you going through is a concern. Like, and I hear that it's hard, you know, so there's that. Now, I am going to put a caveat on the fact that, like, if a person is just loud, wrong, and racist, I am definitely, for my own safety and my own healing, being like, I'm gonna pass this choice to somebody else. I'm not gonna work on this because that's irrational. Like, your racism's irrational. You know, it just is. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't, and it's eating that person up inside. So I'm like, that's something else you gotta process. That honestly, I don't even know. I don't even have any inroads as to how a person could get like that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, we need to let somebody else. It's a team effort. You know, I'm like, that's not on me. You feel me? Like, I can't carry it at all, you know?
Man, what you're saying right there, am I safe in saying it boils down to find common ground?
Yeah, you can. You could say find common ground, but I think it goes deeper than that, man. I think it goes deeper to, like, you know, like common need, you know what I'm saying? Like, at a soul level, like, there's a need in all of our hearts, you know, for love, acceptance, and flourishing, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, oxygen, if you will, like, you know, and if the reality of, like, you know, your success is stepping on my windpipe doesn't click for you, then at some point, either I'm going to push your foot off me. You know what I'm saying? And then, right. And at some point, somebody gonna step on your windpipe, you know, and like, and my hope is that it doesn't get there, you know, but that's us essentially. I feel like what the old folks are saying, you know, just keep on living. You'll see. You stepped on that person's windpipe and it hurt you, you know? So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your next question. You see what I did?
I like it. How do we not get too high on our own supply? You know, we work on ourselves and we begin to think, man, I'm doing this work, I'm changing, I'm making all these changes, and I'm trying to convince other people of this. And, you know, you even write about it in the book, like, shouldn't be what you're or what you're reading, should be what you're learning.
Yeah.
And knowledge actually can be accumulated just like material things.
Yeah, totally.
How do we keep ourselves from not getting too high on our own supply, man?
I think there's two keys of that. I think one key is community, travel. You just, you know, keep some real ones around you. You know what I'm saying? And then secondly, I feel like that true inquiry, what it's going to reveal is how much you don't know. You know, I feel like that true inquiry, if it's not puffed up, like, you know, knowledge being puffed up, but if it's a true inquiry, it's going to humble you, you know, and it's going to continue to create a curiosity. At least that's what happened with me. It continued to create a curiosity and a humility to be like, I honestly, now, had I wrote this book 10 years ago, you know, much younger, I would absolutely be high on my own supply. You know what I'm saying? But I think that there's a certain amount of humility that comes with going through certain types of suffering and processes and, you know, deep examination of yourself, of culture, of society, that makes you come up with this, like, look, man, we're all just guessing, you know? And for me, another key that I do is, you know, like I said before, is like, I try not to prescribe, like, because I don't know what you should do. You know what I'm saying? I am describing, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah. So for me, it's like, that's it, because the book doesn't have any solutions. And I know for some people that's frustrating, but I'm like, well, who am I to give you like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to pretend like I do, you know? This is poetry, guys. You know?
Yeah. From your observations then, and everything that you've described, why do you think we so often look at problems, issues, challenges as a zero-sum game? To lift someone else up, it's got to take away from me. And let's put it in real terms here. You've got Black Lives Matter. Whether you want to believe in the organization or whether you want to believe in the words, I think there are two different things there.
Yeah.
You have that met with such an extreme backlash of all lives matter. And it's presented as this has to be a zero-sum game. To lift black people up, we've got to somehow devalue the rest of all the other races in the world. Why, in your observation, is there such a push to make it a zero-sum game?
Yeah, that's good, man. I think some of this is me getting in the brains of white people, and kind of hypothesizing. So I'm gonna give it a caveat with that because, for the life of me, I had no idea why is this such an affront to you? Like, that it was bizarre. It was honestly bizarre to me. But if I were to guess, it is more of a reflection of their worldview. Like, it's more telling of them to assume that of other people, because if it was your movement, you see things as a scarcity zero-sum game. So maybe that's how they view society, culture, economics, justice as zero-sum. So for anyone else to raise up because of how they function, that means that you're trying to put me down. And I wonder if it goes back to, all the way back to like Thomas Jefferson's fear, you know what I'm saying? Of like, man, if these African slaves ever really organize, like we gonna have a reckoning because we did them wrong. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I wonder if it's that, like the fear of like Nat Turners and like the black uprisings, because it's more of a reflection of how y'all see the world rather than how we do, because it was so clear to me that the word only isn't in front of Black Lives Matter. Like, nobody's like, where'd you added that? Nobody else added that. Nobody's saying that. You said it. You know what I'm saying? So you assuming something that, like, at least for I was concerned, was like, where are they getting that? Like, what is you talking about? You know what I'm saying? And it felt so disingenuous again, because like, am I not included in all? Like, how is that a comeback? Your comeback don't even make sense, So then I'm going, oh, it's because you honestly see me as other. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't count in culture. You just showed me your cards. So to me, like I said, this is an hypothesis, but that's the hypothesis. So then again, going back to like the Terraform ideas, like I would ask, where'd you get that from? What is this scarcity, this capitalistic approach to justice that makes you feel like if anyone else is getting freed, that means it's slavery to y'all? Like, where'd you get that from? Do you operate like this? Do you think that's a problem? Then maybe you need to do some self-reflection before you worry about this movement. It's essentially saying, hey, can you just kind of stop killing us in the streets? Like, is that so bad? Is that such an affront to your life? You know what I'm saying? That like, is that how are you suffering in any way by Black people asking for equal access to loans? Does that mean you won't get a loan? Is that the way you think about this? Like, so if I get one, that means you don't. Tells me a lot about your character. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, now that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I think about it.
I'm struck by what you just said and reflecting on my favorite part of the book, man, where you talked about math problems versus philosophy problems or philosophical problems. What you just said is too many people see this as a math problem. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You're trying to change the math rather than changing your philosophy. You know what I'm saying? It's like maybe the whole system's flawed.
How does your faith play a role in that philosophy?
Man, I think that in a lot of ways, these were all the major and minor prophets. They were imagining a different future. They were looking at culture and going, guys, what are we doing here? We've mission drift. We're off the map here, guys. And just essentially kind of just throwing up their hands from the margins, like, yo, it don't have to be like this. What are we building? This is who are we? Why are we like this? So I feel like in some senses I'm pulling from that. I think in another sense I'm the faith plays into the role of like the loftiness of the idea of a cosmic Christ, if you will, that transcends our narratives, that are big, that's bigger than our stories, that's bigger than our words. You know what I'm saying? And when we put them in words, it's already a container that is not doing the cosmicness, the transcendence of the Christ justice. You know what I'm saying? So to me, the faith plays into it in the imagine a better future. I'm like, this was the challenge. This was what Israel, if I'm looking at scripture, like at least Torah, it's like, that's what y'all was called to do. You was called to imagine a different culture, and just show us what it could be. You know what I'm saying? So I just think in a micro sense of like within myself, in a micro sense within my family, within my marriage, it's like, what could we be? And just being like, yeah, what if I accepted? Like, I know before the pandemic, the idea of my daughter was begging to be homeschooled, my oldest daughter. And I was like, we can't homeschool you. There's no way. My wife's a PhD. You know what I'm saying? She's a professional. Like, she works in a nonprofit. I tour all the time. Nobody's home. Like, we can't do it. Then we had to. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, oh, so we can. So like, that's what I mean. It's like, that's it. It's like, well, you can't until you can, So to me, that's the prophetic imagination that I feel like where my faith plays into. It's like, yo, have a prophetic imagination. Like, what could we be? Could you really love your neighbor? Like, could I?
I kind of glossed over it there, but I'd love for you to dig into the math versus philosophical problem.
Yeah.
How are the two different? Explain to the girl listening right now.
Yeah.
How to view the world in those two dichotomies.
Yeah. So if you have an understanding of like how reality works, right? So like not using the same example from the book, but like, gravity, it's like what goes up must come down. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how it works. And if something didn't go down, it's because something stopped it. You know what I mean? Like why didn't it fall at a certain rate? At a certain speed, because gravity pulls objects at a pretty consistent speed. So if you're like, well, why didn't it work? Well, it's like, there was some other factor. That's where I had to change my calculations. The wind, the humidity, an object stopped it. Like so there's other forces. It's like, if you just have to work the math out, right? That's how it works. But what if one day you drop something and instead of it going down, it kept going sideways? And you're like, why is this? This is not how it works. And no matter how many times you do the math isn't adding up to what you're experiencing. So what that means is either you can keep doing these math problems to make this dental floss box go sideways rather than down to explain what you just saw, or you have to accept that there are things about gravity you don't understand. Gravity just shown you that your formulas are off. So no matter how many times you plug the numbers in, you're never going to get it right because your formula isn't complex enough. So that's what I'm trying to say. You either change your math or change your philosophy. For example, using more of a cultural thing, it's like we keep switching between Democrat presidents and Republican presidents, and you still trying to figure out, this Congress or this Congress, like, why is culture not getting better? Because you just change in math. right? What if you step back and say, why do we have a two-party system? Maybe we don't have to have that. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm assuming American society can only function a certain way, and I just need to put the right numbers in, or maybe saying like, what if it don't? The numbers are still going to keep being, maybe it's the philosophy. Maybe I'm thinking about government all wrong, so that's what I mean by that. Like, and I'm just saying the possibilities are far more vast, far more creative, far more complex than your math, equations as to how society should work is giving it credit for, so that's kind of what I'm trying to say is like, the impossible may not be that. You just don't have a formula for it,
Yeah. I call it the third way. Like there's not an A or B, there's not a black, white, there's not a Republican versus Democrat. There is a third way that we can go if we are open to that third way.
For sure.
Man, do you ever get frustrated by
Yes.
You're a poet, you're a writer, you're a songwriter, you're a musician, you're so many things, you're so educated. Do you ever get frustrated by not having the words to say everything that you want to say?
Of course, man. Yeah, totally. I definitely like have learned to practice like the book, practice quiet, and just like, if I don't have the words, then wait, or just don't say anything, you know what I'm saying? Until you do have them, but yeah, that frustration, is very real. And, but it takes a certain level, again, that like you asked before, not to get high on your own supply, to kind of like just shut up for a second, or a lot of seconds, and for me, that's like cue to listen, that somebody else may have those words, and will probably say it better than I do. So I need to start like listening more, so that's kind of the B side to that question. But yes, I absolutely get frustrated about it. And then the B side is, so I just don't talk. It's pretty, people talk about writer's block, and I'm like, you could just stop writing. You know what I'm saying? It just wait till you got something,
What's the moment like then when another one of my favorite pieces by you is Bored of Education, where bored is BORED, and that play on words. What's the moment like for you, man, when that kind of that hits you? Like, I'm gonna take
it's the
this.
Funnest moment because it's like I picture it as like a fully zipped up, like pressing the sides to the rim suitcase. So I'm like, oh, the poem's in it. It's already got it. I just got to figure out how to unpack it. But I'm like, it's there. So a lot of times once you come across a phrase like that, I can put it on the shelf. I'm like, oh, that's done already. I'll put it on the shelf. You know what I'm saying? And then then it's exciting. Then I'm like, man, I can't wait to open that. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? It was the same as the phrase Precious Puritans, or like, what's another one that did that? Or If Coffee Were Man. It's just like, once you get the sentence, you're like, done. It's in there. And I can take my time because it's already there, So for me, the moment is it's joy, but I don't feel the need to rush to write it because I know it's there already,
In that piece, man, and I'll link it up in the show notes because I want people to go and listen to it and watch it. Man, how would you attack education? And I mean, because education is got a huge microscope on it right now, with so many state legislatures debating and coming up with laws on what we're going to teach and what we're not going to teach.
Yeah.
You're saying like the whole system needs to be reimagined. How would you reimagine education?
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to like, how would I convince someone to take a COVID vaccine? It's like, well, we need to step away from the topic for a second and ask, like, what do we value here? And do you trust us? So I think that's the biggest question to me with the education system is like, okay, what do we value? Like, what's the culture we're trying to make? Right. So do we value, automatrons? Like, are we trying to make widgets for the economy? Like, I want to put somebody on a assembly line that knows how to follow directions? Do I value, I know it sounds a little Marxist, but like, I mean, if you look at our current education system, sorry guys, you got to look at it. It's pretty Marxist. You know what I'm saying? Like, whether you want to admit it or not, I'm just saying, look at it. You know what I'm saying? You're creating widgets, to stay in their lane. You feel me? Yeah. And I know that because with our growing unemployment rate, rather than raising minimum wage, you'd rather lower the unemployment benefits. And because you're saying that people won't go get jobs because unemployment benefits are too high. So the answer isn't pay better. So your answer isn't pay better than unemployment. Your answer is lower unemployment. Yeah, you just want widgets. You know what I'm saying? You just want automatron. So you don't value, like you say you do, innovation, leadership, growth. Like you don't value that, right? So my question first is to step back and say, what do we value? What are the type of citizens we're trying to create? And if that's the case, if you want an educated voter bloc, if you want a culture that, according to America's like, we want to be the number one in everything, which, I mean, guys, we're just not, like, again, look at it. You got to look at it, you want to outpace China. You trying to outpace, all these other countries who have made these, but outpace them in a way that doesn't undermine, the soul and the integrity of what our holy documents say. Then the idea of erasing an entire swath of our foundation in our education system, that's what China did. Like they don't teach that they're communists. But it's a single party that they are, though. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, so if your attempt to pull an entire clearly obvious, absolutely what happened thing out of American history, what are you preserving? Like, so to me, it's like, well, let's step back from education for a second and answer that question. What are you trying to preserve? What are you trying to protect? And what do you value? And until you're willing to look those answers in the face and to be honest, for anybody who works in education, is like, you value power and whiteness. That's what you value. You know what I'm saying? So like, and that's what you're doing. You're protecting power and whiteness. Is the sky blue? Like, that's what's happening, And until you're willing to look at that, I just don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Then these school vouchers and budgets and tying like school, district budgets to property taxes, but those property taxes are also in redlined districts so that like, we can't move into these nicer neighborhoods to go to nicer schools because that thing is zoned and we can't get loans for this. It's like, oh, y'all, that's what you disconnected. That's what you're doing. You protecting power and whiteness. So I think that my suggestion is to step back and ask yourself this question. What are you preserving?
What's a question that you wish you were asked more?
I think I said it in the book too. It's like, yo, what are you unlearning? Like, what are you trying to unravel in yourself right now? I think that's the question. Like, what's a practice you're unlearning?
I got to ask you, what are you unlearning right now, man?
Nothing, man. I got it all figured out.
That's why you wrote a book, right?
That's why I wrote a book. Nah, I think I'm unlearning just like a number of things, like this idea of like the way respect looks to me, like whether it's from my peers, from my colleagues, from my wife or my children, like the way that I was learning, like, yo, you gotta stand up for yourself. And I truly believe you do. But what would make me satisfied that this person respects me? And there were signals that for years I thought especially with my children, it's like, well, unquestioned obedience. You know what I'm saying? It's I should only have to tell you once. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I thought. You watch your mouth around me. There's certain jokes you don't tell. There's things you don't, stuff that you know, I better like step lightly with my father. You know what I'm saying? Like, not because I'm scared of him, but I respect him. But the truth is, that was really fear. You know what I'm saying? I kind of wanted you to be scared of me. But then I didn't want you to be scared of me because I want you to crawl in the bed and cuddle and watch, you know, and come to daddy because he's a big old teddy bear and you love him, you know? But like, so I had to really unlearn what showing prop respect looks like. I felt like if anybody like of my colleagues like divvied into my lane, like just now, my homie Andy Minio, he just left the Onyx Coffee headquarters because they're going to do a coffee with him. I would have felt so slighted by that because like, wait, coffee's my thing. You know what I'm saying? Respect my space. Like, what, the man can't drink coffee? Like, what did you talking about? Like, they are a fully functioning, they're their own business and they can partner with whoever they want to partner with. You know what I'm saying? And that's your homie. And you put him on the coffee. Like, I taught Andy coffee. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's not a slight to you, you know? So like, yeah. So those are the types of things I'm unlearning. Like, what does it mean to be respected, you know, and like, and just look for different or better signals.
What does that look like, man? I am fascinated to hear what your version of respect sounds like now versus what it used to.
I don't know. I'm still at the unraveling part. You know, I haven't relearned yet, you know. There are moments with like, just now I saw my daughter, like, she's about to go on a road trip with my wife. I just saw her out the window because it's Friday, empty the trash. And I'm like, she did it. Friday, she emptied the trash. She did it. And it's like, well, yeah, it's my chore. I know it's Friday and I know I'm leaving. But I was like, I taught you something and you remembered. Yeah. And I didn't have to tell you and I didn't yell at you. And you're not doing this because you're afraid of me. It's because it's just your chore. And I'm like, that's dope. Her chores are not a reflection of her respect for me. They're just her chores, you know? So that's the type of stuff that like, I'm still processing, but yeah, like, I don't know the answer yet, you know?
Man, you and I had a Twitter exchange recently where you didn't even know something that I tweeted out a quote from your book and you didn't even know it was from your book, but I got to read it to you again. Cause it is, if I summed up everything, it would be this. It says, I feel like some things are so true, so divine, so beautiful that words one uses to explain them diminish them. Yeah. Sometimes the truth is greater than the words for which it's being carried.
Yeah.
How do you come to that moment of realization that you just simply don't have the words to throw out everything that you feel?
That's when you ask me where the faith comes in, it's that. It's when for me, it's like you're sitting in Morocco, you know, in northern Morocco around a table of Muslims having tea and just talking life. And you're like, the Holy Spirit's here. I don't know how else to explain this moment. The Holy Spirit's here. I don't know. If y'all in the podcast, I'm throwing my hands up and shrugging. I don't know what to tell you. Holy Spirit's here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't have an answer for it. You know, I'm sitting across the table from, you know, an LGBTQ couple and just looking at their love for each other. I'm looking at their love for scripture, their desire to see Christ in their life. And you're like, shrugs my shoulders again. I don't know what to tell you. Christ is here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so what are the words for that? I don't have them. You know what I'm saying? So you just keep experiencing these moments that don't fit in the categories in the same. And I would even say that for a person's salvation, the first time that using evangelical terms, like, okay, then you put into words when Christ came into your heart. The hell was that like? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know. You can't describe. It was a thing. It was a divine, like, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not like you understood penal substitutionary atonement. You know what I'm saying? That moment, you're like, oh, got it. Transpropitiation. Oh, there was an exchange for, you ain't get that. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm going to argue you don't still. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, so for me, that's how I get to that, to where I'm like, I don't have an apologetic for this. There's no chapter and verse address. I don't know what to tell you. I think of Peter sitting on that roof in Acts chapter 8, blanket being dropped down to him, rise and eat. I'm not eating this shit. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, well, actually, called nothing I made clean, unclean. You know what I'm saying? And being like, this doesn't work, because I don't know if you know, in your Torah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you told us it was this. You feel me? So I just imagined, and him knowing, of course he knew, like, oh, you're talking about Gentiles. Like, but wait, here's the thing though, they're Gentiles and that's your idea. You know what I'm saying? So like, so those moments that you see them in scripture, to where you're like, I don't know what to do with this, but it's divine. And I'd be lying to myself to say it's not. And then I think also on the other way around, to where it's like, in my own sort of cultural, like, to borrow, a white term, of deconstruction, in my own deconstruction, you get to the bottom of that and I'm going, yeah, but that Jesus guy, man, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can give you a trillion reasons why I should be out. You know what I'm saying? And historical, you spend some time in the Arab region, I feel like this Jesus guy may just be a composite of a lot of other, like, you know what I'm saying? And you're like, maybe, could be. I'm not going to fight you over it. I'm just like, but damn, man, I'm pretty moved by it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, that's how you get to it,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Man, last question for you here. I love the theme of our conversation here, and that is self-reflection. That's working on yourself. I loved how you said maybe not common ground, but common need. I'm going to start using that, by the way. I'll credit you.
Thank you, sir.
But those moments where we even realize that, hey, we're in one of those divine moments. We're in one of those moments where we just simply don't have the words.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do to pull yourself away from the busyness and just listen? I believe you say in the book, relax, remember. What is
breathe.
It?
Relax,
breathe.
Remember, breathe. Yeah.
What can we do to pull away and relax, remember, and breathe?
Man, I think from a practical sense is like hobbies, that don't make it online, or if they do, they're on, they're not for any other purpose except for you just sharing a joy. I think drugs are great. Just kidding. Kind of. No, like if you need meds, for sure. You know what I'm saying? But I think hobbies, I think unplugging your phone does have an off switch. I think, like finding something that's, that just is just for you, I think really has done a number for me, and what's funny is like coffee started off like that, where I was like, this is just fun, and then it became something else, which I'm happy for, obviously, but like there are things around my house, things that I do at home, that I'm like, I don't, I'm an avid cigar smoker. It's never on my gram, because it's not for anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm relaxing, I'm unplugging. This isn't for consumption, So I think having things that aren't for consumption, and that you can do by yourself, stream a show. Like to me, that's what I've done.
Beautiful, man. How can people connect with you? How can people follow along with your work? How can people get the book?
Yep.
All that good stuff.
Yep. prophiphop.com is my website, and Prop Hip Hop is all of my social handles. Links to everything there, the podcast, the books, the coffee, again, the merch, all of it. It's all at prophiphop.com. And yeah, you catch me at Prop Hip Hop on all my socials.
Well, Prop, man, I appreciate you doing this. I've enjoyed the conversation, man. I enjoyed the book, and best wishes and best of luck to you, brother.
Yeah, bro. Thanks, man. It was fun.
Man, I loved that conversation with Prop. Just incredible. So many thanks for Prop for coming on the show and sharing his story, his wisdom, his experience, his art. Please do me and Prop a huge favor and share this episode. Share it on your social media. Tag me, tag Prop. Let us know you're listening. Let us know the key takeaways that you got out of this conversation. The key points in what Prop said. Share this episode with your network and help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions. And if you like the conversations with amazing guests like Propaganda that I have on each week, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me at michael@thefollowupquestion.com or go to thefollowupquestion.com and reach out there. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question. And until then, keep asking questions.